We'd entered debate on item 14. Yanni had put forward 3 amendments. We adjourned the item to get advice on the 3 amendments. We hadn't got as far as getting the seconders for any of them as yet. So where we're up to is now we've got staff advice on the 3 amendments which have been put forward. There's been a bit of work done in the break, which has resulted in some additional wording in the main resolution, and a conversation just now with Yanni as well. But if we can get the staff advice on the 3 amendments, one at a time, that would be great. So if we can deal with the first one first. Yeah, so if we can get, so we've got them here. That the council request improved urban design and increased protection for trees and versatile soils be added as priorities for the urban growth partnership. That was the first amendment that Yanni was proposing. So if we can get some staff advice on that, please. Thanks.
Just to start off though, Sam raised the question of whether you can actually amend the agreement. The advice to you is yes, you could amend the agreement, but what that would mean is that agreement would then have to go back to all the partners for their consideration and agreement. There's a couple of partners who've already agreed to the wording with that clause in there. So that would delay the process quite considerably. So one of the partners will be the Crown or the government having to reconsider. So technically you can, but actually it would be
significant amount of work in time.
So what we've come up with in F, and Leanne and Tim had a conversation about this in the break, is something that achieves the priority that Yanni's wanting to achieve, but through a mechanism that doesn't cause that delay and that actually is able to happen in the context of the agreement.
The other thing I would say to you is that the amendments put up add probably very little value, and so that delay would be for pretty much no value, and I'll explain why. So the first suggested amendment in relation to urban design, protection of trees and versatile soils. So versatile soils will be required to be protected under an upcoming national policy statement, and all the partner councils and the Crown are already working towards that, assuming that we do need to protect versatile soils. So that will be something that the committee will have to do anyway, as will we. In relation to urban design and protection of trees, again, those are going to be required anyway, as we are required to do. So removing those elements won't add anything to the obligations of the committee. I just want to make also the point that even if the committee wasn't to prioritise those matters, which they will, and the early discussions on the spatial plan have already highlighted those as important matters, there's nothing precluding this council doing its own protection of our trees and prioritising urban design for our city. But like I said, the committee in the early discussions on the spatial plan have already identified those matters as important matters. Removal of clause 9.3v. The obligations that are sitting and mentioned in that clause are obligations that the parties have to comply with anyway. So even if that clause wasn't actually explicitly mentioned in the agreement, they will still be bound by those obligations. So removing that particular clause will add absolutely nothing to the obligations of the committee and the partner councils. The third suggestion up there around noting the delays, noting those delays is quite appropriate. I think the whole team is disappointed with the delays with that housing work. So my advice to you is that would actually be quite an appropriate note. That's number 3.
Okay, so where that leads us to is that the priority that Yanni is signalling in proposed amendment 1 is now picked up using a mechanism that we can use without causing any delay in clause F. So Yanni, on that basis, are you happy to not proceed with amendment 1 and we just pick it up as a priority in clause F in green? Yeah. Great, thank you. The advice on proposed amendment 2 is that it would be meaningless because it's got to happen anyway and probably doesn't achieve what you were seeking to achieve in any case. The NPSUD is what it is, and we remain needing to work in that framework. regardless of whether it's in the agreement or not, and it would be a negative. It would be a negative. I'm confused as to what's happening now. Oh no, we'll deal with that as an amendment. That noting the lack of progress we'll deal with as an amendment. So 2, on the basis of the advice, you're happy to withdraw, Yanni? All right. Well, yeah. Okay. So I mean, we've received advice that it makes no difference whatsoever to remove it. So is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay. So that lapses for want of a seconder. And the third one, we can either just amalgamate as a noting provision, or we can deal with it as an amendment. Okay, so Leanne, Tim, you're happy for it to be put in there as a noting provision, so let's do that. So just to, yeah, I see what you were saying now. Incorporate it as a G as a note. Yep. Okay.
So just on F, it's probably best to put that request Christchurch City Council.
Yes, it is. Yeah, Christchurch City Council GCP members, and that was certainly what was intended. So thank you for that. Yeah, so request Christchurch City Council GCP members. Yep, all right, and then G, and it might just need a tidy up of the wording so that it flows properly with the... Yeah, so rather than that, the council, so just G, notes, concern at the... Yep, all right. And that's all now included in the main resolution, so we don't need to deal with any of them as amendments. So this is moved and seconded. As we were, Yanni, we're in debate and you're speaking.
Okay. Thanks. So I just wanted to, I'm disappointed I didn't get a seconder for the amendment to remove 9.3V. When the MPS, when we were briefed on the MPS, there was concern. Some of the quotes were horrifically tone deaf, an Auckland plan written by Wellington bureaucrats. And then there was a lot of talk about that the MPS seemed directed at fixing problems in Auckland and would instead cause problems in Christchurch, especially around the availability of things like car parking in the city, but also in terms of a small number of high-rise buildings and a large number of vacant sites. Some councillors called it nothing more than an Auckland policy, and it was like cramming a round peg into a square hole. Some councillors urged residents to rise up and wrote to local MPs and make their voices heard. And I guess at the end of the day, the idea of having an urban growth partnership in collaboration with central government is a really good one. It's something that this council has successfully tried to do through things like the housing accord, and certainly in the post-earthquake environment, there have been numerous examples of where there was supposed to be collaboration and partnership with central government. But sadly, what seems to be apparent is that we've often been on the end of being told what to do, and that's being filtered through to our local communities. So, I think the idea of the partnership is really positive, but it needs to be open and collaborative, not simply a case of us simply just doing what government is demanding that we do, particularly when it comes to the MPS on urban development. There are so many problems with that policy statement that at a grassroots level, in terms of Christchurch and Greater Christchurch, there are going to be significant problems associated with it. And that, I think, will filter through to the loss of neighbourhood amenity, poor urban design outcomes, lack of tree protection. And although we note that there's a versatile soils MPS to come, the reality is that protecting the environment and trees should happen first before you allow massive redevelopment and intensification. And sadly, I don't think the timing is going to work. But this is our opportunity to work constructively with central government over a partnership approach that should include regulatory and non-regulatory matters. And so I can't see any reason why we'd continue down the track that we have when, as a council, we've raised so many concerns about the MPS. This just looks to enshrine it in the work program going forward. So I'm not going to be supporting this document today. I think the other thing is we really do need to lift the game on social and affordable housing. This actually goes back to 2007 when the idea of inclusionary zoning was first discussed. You think of what's happened with house prices across the region in recent times and post-earthquake, and you look at it and say, if we'd done the work when we said we would do it, we may have a lot better outcomes than we've currently got for people being able to own, their own house. So I won't support this today, not because I don't believe in the concept, but I think having that clause 9.3 is not the right approach. We should be much more open-minded and collaborative with central government rather than just doing what they're telling us to do.
Thank you. Tim and then Leanne. Tim.
Thank you. And look, I really appreciate Yanni bringing up F and G, and I'm more than happy for them to be included. If you look at F, the difference between versatile soils and trees are two very different topics. It would be very good to have a discussion with our staff on how we look at protecting sites with trees, etc. We go on and on about the canopy and how much, say, London or New York have more trees than we do, which is surprising. But I could take you around Spraydon, Summerfield, and a number of others, and I can think of 6 sites that have been bulldozed clear for urban development. And people are not against intensification, and I'm sure there are some that are NIMBYs without question, but generally the concern that I get is how it's being done. And I think Jane's comments with regards, we can as a city do something. I think we need to really look at that and move that forward. So I think that's a priority, and obviously not for today. With regards to social housing and intensification and the number of houses, I did ask that at some stage that we get the numbers of properties being developed and those houses being built, because there is a huge number being built. The numbers between 2007 and the increase from then to now is, I think, significant, and it would be good to get an idea of that. And I know that the social housing network are really full on, and the numbers that we get through regulatory compliance, it is significant. So it would be really good to get an idea of how many are being built, where they're being built, and how that's going to curb the demand. So, yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you. I would hate anyone tuning in today to think that this was bad news. This is a great news story. It is a fantastic opportunity for our city to collaborate with our 2 closest neighbours, Waimakariri and Selwyn districts, with Environment Canterbury, with the DHB, but most importantly with Ngāi Tahu, to understand the values as relating to the treaty relationship that we have worked so incredibly hard to develop. So this is an opportunity for us to join with the government's urban growth agenda. So it is a government agenda. They have designed it for greater alignment, integration and coordination between central government, local government and mana whenua around housing, land use, infrastructure planning and investment. Well, I'm sorry, but I've been saying that since I arrived, and I actually thought that we had everyone around the table saying the same thing. There are elements of government policy that I don't agree with. There is going to be an incredible debate here next Monday where I think we might actually find unanimity around the table on a matter of government policy. The MPS urban development is in place. We can't ignore it. We can work with it, and we are still awaiting staff advice about how that might resolve around the urban form. And one of the issues that you councillors entrusted me with was the ability to present a submission on the draft bill on natural and built environment as part of the RMA reforms. Nobody should be blind to that. I want to be sitting at the table with central government ministers as they go through the RMA reforms. We are doing so in an RMA context that gives us an enduring urban growth partnership. It gives us joint spatial planning, where we can integrate with central government agencies and develop joint work programs to comprise key transformative initiatives. And yes, I'm quoting from the memorandum of agreement, but it is designed for that purpose. And I think a lot of the challenges that are faced in Greater Christchurch will benefit from us sitting down and talking with our neighbours, with Ngāi Tahu and with central government in such an open and transformative way.
So there's been quite a bit of comment through questions and also from Yanni by way of what he was seeking to achieve in these amendments around national policy. There can only be significant benefit in direct engagement with ministers and senior officials. It's a significant step forward in being able to articulate local and sub-regional issues, but at the same time, it's a significant step forward in being able to influence through this committee the development of national policy, which we've heard so much about this morning. So I note some of the matters raised in questions, the complexity of those matters, and I'm pleased that some of that, particularly around public transport, is going to be able to be briefed so that we've got a clear understanding of what the challenges, the opportunities, and the mechanisms are. And I think that's hugely important that we all understand that very, very clearly. But in terms of the decisions in front of us today, I'm supportive of the changes that are made through these agreements, and obviously therefore supportive of the approval of them. Was there any further debate? Oh. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? So Yanni against and Aaron against. Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you.